Welcome back into Morning Kick Around. Robert Kerr alongside Jason Davis, and we are welcomed by a special guest in the post-house ruling era. We've brought on sports lawyer Andrew Viznovsky. Welcome to Morning Kick Around. Walking into a bold new world here, and probably lots of legalese to come.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. The house settlement is a wild thing. It's kind of crazy. It's going to set out the basically how college sports operate for the next 10 years, barring any other legal challenges to it, which is kind of mind-blowing that a court settlement is going to do that and not some sort of collective bargaining agreement, which is a gripe for another time, hopefully in 10 years. But it changes the landscape of professional sports in the United States significantly, and completely changes one of the biggest sports industries in our country.
Yeah, Andrew, one of the reasons we wanted to get you on is because, after the settlement was approved, and I don't know how deep into the legal stuff we want to get with that, but I know you have some thoughts about the approval of the settlement to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And this does not just apply to soccer, but we care about soccer. You're soccer lawyer on Blue Sky.
Right.
What you said was that this decision or this approval of the settlement, it makes the NCAA Division I soccer the largest unsanctioned professional soccer league in the world. And that seems like a big statement. Can we break that down? And just for anybody who might need to be walked all the way there, why would you say something like that? How does that make sense?
Sure. So when you think of how soccer is organized, it's kind of under like different umbrellas that are under different umbrellas, right? And so you have FIFA at the top. That's the biggest umbrella. And then it has national associations that are underneath that govern and sanction the sport within those countries. So for us in the United States, that would be US Soccer. So US Soccer has to sanction and govern the leagues for those leagues to be within the FIFA family under the FIFA umbrella. The NCAA has never been directly sanctioned by US Soccer and kind of operates under its own rules too, right? Like they have different substitution rules. They have different time counting rules. They have a lot of different ways to go about governing the sport, but they're not governed by US Soccer. And the way that sort of has been sort of pushed to the side and ignored is, one, soccer is not the biggest sport in the United States. The United States is a big country that FIFA wants to be involved in. And also this idea that like it's quote unquote amateur sports, so that it's not as big of a deal as say if a professional league was operating outside of the sanctioning of the United States Soccer Federation. So now with the House settlement, because universities can start paying athletes cash money dollars for performing and playing on their team, and not just for their image rights or for their names, you have a situation where the leagues are becoming at worst semi-professional, because some players might get paid and some might not, and at best fully professional. We should say that this is college sports. The teams are getting $20 million. The school institutions are getting $20 million to pay all of their students and student athletes, and most of that money, probably 90% or even higher, is going to go to basketball and American football. But yes, I think the sports that are just under that are probably women's soccer, men's soccer, and probably like maybe men's hockey and maybe women's hockey, maybe softball too. So there are going to be players that meet the definition under FIFA regulations, that meet FIFA's definition of professional, that are playing for these leagues or these college teams, just by virtue of the numbers of how many people participate, right? And so a soccer powerhouse like Virginia is going to start paying players because they want to recruit and stay on top of that. I think we'll see a lot of schools maybe get rid of their soccer program, unfortunately, or drop down division or make it a club sport. Or we'll start seeing them commercialize their teams more and start promoting their teams more like a professional team in a way where they can start making money to cover the costs of keeping these players around. It's funny, not to get too deep into the legal weeds, but I've always said that NCAA has always been a professional soccer league, because the FIFA regulations say that the only thing that makes a player professional is if they're getting paid more than what they spend to participate. So if you look at scholarships as compensation for their involvement in the team, it's already sort of professional. But it's easy for FIFA to hand wave that away and be like, well, they're just getting paid to play. They're getting a scholarship. It's an in-kind thing. They're still not getting paid to play. It's different but related.
There's a lot there, obviously, and we are talking to you after we now have word that US Soccer has formed a committee. I believe it's called Next Gen. And JT Batson, CEO of US Soccer, specifically said that this is kind of as a result. They are following the path now that is laid out by the House settlement. So, with what you just said, if indeed NCAA Division I soccer at the very least meets all the requirements for what is professional soccer, I don't know if you have any sense of what FIFA might do in this situation, or if US Soccer is trying to cut FIFA off at the pass and make sure that FIFA doesn't start imposing things that would burden soccer and potentially end all these programs, because, as you said, schools might just not think it's worth their while anymore.
Yeah, so I don't think FIFA would ever step in and stop. There's no way they can really stop these teams from playing. The only thing that they could do is ban players from playing international football.
Okay. Yeah.
There's a question as to how things like USL League 2 and NPSL work with loans for players playing in those summer leagues from those schools. But I think generally FIFA's opinion of soccer happening in the United States is, if it's happening, we're happy to have it happen. And so I don't think they're going to really be really hammer down the NCAA in any way. I don't think they look at them as any sort of competition for what they're doing either, unlike, say, like a European Super League. But there might be some issues with players playing on national teams if these NCAA leagues or conferences start really professionalizing and not coming into the fold. I know that a lot of Power 5 conferences have been in talks with US Soccer for a really long time, even prior to the House settlement, to work on the schedule and trying to put together a year-round schedule, which I think is which they're getting some headway on. So this isn't the first time and the first reason for their collaboration with US Soccer, but US Soccer being involved and announcing their involvement means to me that they're going to have some sort of sanctioning of these college conferences in some way. I don't think it'll necessarily be like a division. They'll call them all Division 3s. I think maybe they just have a third level or a fourth level in the pro league standards. It's just college soccer. But that's more of a guess than anything else.
I'm sorry, Rob. I'm sorry. I know you want to jump in here, but basically what we're laying out, and you're right. I mean, what can FIFA really do? Probably nothing. I mean, it's an opt-in situation, not necessarily that FIFA has any power over college soccer. But what you're saying is basically the way the world that I'm imagining is just a world where there are a lot of exceptions, which has always been the case for college sports, right? It's just exception on top of exception. If these are professional players, do the same rules apply to them, the ones that have been collectively bargained or anything like that? Does any of that apply to these players? And who gets to decide that they don't? And I know the NCAA is looking for an antitrust exemption as part of the fallout from this.
Yeah, I mean, so it'll be interesting what happens with the laws around these if Congress gets their act together to pass laws that says that the NCAA can have an antitrust exemption. I don't know how that could supersede the settlement. Possibly. I don't know. Class action settlements are different than what I usually do in my practice. And class action settlements already are a little bit more impervious to antitrust challenges than your run-of-the-mill settlement agreement. But I think and honestly, I don't know if the question will ever be answered, because like there's questions like this all around the way that American soccer works and how it applies FIFA regulations, because everything is a little weird and different here compared to the rest of the world. And FIFA seems very comfortable granting us some sort of exemption or some sort of stay of execution, just because of virtue of how different we run our sporting institutions here versus the rest of the world.
It's hard to know if this is like the death knell of the college system, or the first step in the path for it to being at its best. It's my head is whirling a little bit, trying to kind of get my head around this, because obviously the House ruling probably didn't necessarily have soccer in the forefront when it came down, and then with the development of FIFA, or not FIFA, the USSF having like a plan to kind of swoop in, kind of adds a new element. Do you think that we're headed into a Wild West, or more of like a foot forward, legitimized
consolidation?
Consolidate. Like, is this a step towards legitimacy, or a step towards just like oblivion?
Yeah, I don't think it's oblivion. I think for a very long time, especially on the men's side, less so on the women's, because the women's college soccer has all proved to be a great system for developing professional players, and similar to the rest of college sports in terms of developing world-class athletes, right? The United States is at the top of the heap when it comes to literally every sport except soccer, when it comes to developing players through NCAA. And it's just men's soccer. And so it's sort of been, I think, for as long as MLS has existed, since the 1994 World Cup, we have had this problem in this country of trying to figure out why our development system for men's soccer is not nearly as effective as our development system is for literally every other sport. And I don't think we're getting close to figuring out what that answer is. Part of it is everybody else invests all of their assets into developing men's soccer players. And in the United States, it's one of many things that we're developing athletes in. But I think getting our college soccer and our academic soccer system in tune to the point where it is able to develop world-class athletes is something that's going to require a lot of change to begin with, and nobody was really sure what that change looked like. And I think we're headed in the right direction in terms of organization and possibly funding. But I also think that there will be a little bit of a mad scramble as I think universities start to prioritize what sports they want to invest in and what sports they need to cut unfortunately, based off of the House settlement. Personally, I don't think they need to cut any. And for most universities, Division I sports, regardless of whether or not they're revenue generating or not, are basically marketing tools for the institution, and tools to get that institution ranked higher in national rankings, which increases applications, which increases the cost of attending schools. All of this stuff is like tertiary and secondarily generating revenue for the university. I mean, also just straight up name recognition for the university, so they can get better applicants applying for the schools. And so I think some universities are going to, regardless of that, are going to start picking what sports they want to prioritize. And so a school whose soccer program is really struggling, that you don't really hear about players being developed out of, they might drop it because it's not giving them that ROI. But a school that has leaned into men's Division I soccer for a long time historically, they are probably going to pump more resources into it and get more assets to bring in better players. And so I think that reformation and that reorganization is going to happen. And it'll be interesting to see how that that works, and if there is some sort of conference realignment for soccer. I'm not sure how that will happen or pan out.
Well, so let me pause you there, Andrew, because I guess maybe this will be our denouement here. Is, do you think so? U.S. Soccer, and if U.S. Soccer is being proactive as an organizer of the game in America, they should be wanting this role.
Absolutely.
But of course, what we're looking at here is, will there be a willingness to work together? Because the NCAA would essentially set a precedent that an Olympic organization, Olympic sport governing body, is now involved directly in their athletics somehow, if this next gen thing bears any fruit. And do they really want that? Do they want USA Swimming and USA Basketball and USA Gymnastics to suddenly come to them and say, well, you did it with soccer, we should be involved in this too?
I think that they would be fine with it. I think the NCAA is more concerned with marketing and selling TV money than they are with governing and managing the individual sports. And so if they can delegate tasks of handling rules and competitions and events and sort of guiding the development process, I think the NCAA would be happy to just sort of defer to the governing bodies if they wanted to involve themselves. I also think a lot of the governing bodies don't want to do it either. They just want to field teams that go to the Olympics and they can ride on the coattails of that.
Yeah, soccer's in a different category in that regard.
Yeah,
it seems like.
But I think that the NCAA wouldn't. I don't think there's a lot of like turf wars with that. I think what the NCAA wants to do is be a platform for developing world-class athletes, second to selling media rights to the college football playoffs and the NCAA basketball tournament. So I think they would be happy letting US Soccer sort of run the show with these tournaments. I don't foresee there being like a big turf war, if that makes sense. Rugby did that for all college rugby. USA Rugby handled it for a very long time, and then it finally got into the NCAA fold because it was a lot of resources for USA Rugby to do that. So it's not unprecedented.
Looking at your Blue Sky at soccerlawyer at bluesky.social, this college issue has definitely been a burning topic, but there's many other legal things going on in American soccer right now. If you were to pick one other kind of burning legal topic, what would that be out of the bunch?
Ooh, I think this isn't necessarily legal, but it's more sports governance, so it touches on legal. But I'm really interested to see how US Soccer handles USL's promotion and relegation proposal, and how it's going to handle sanctioning its leagues based off of promotion relegation. To me, it seems like you would just look at all the teams in the entire USL system as a whole and see if you can break it out so that it fits all of the requirements. I could also see them not doing that and really sticking to their guns in terms of the standards, but then they would have to get recertified almost every year.
Yeah.
But I think that is going to be a really interesting question as to how they handle teams moving in and out of professional leagues and the professional tiers regularly. I think it's an interesting question for their regulations. I don't know what their stomach is for changing the rules. I think the pro council will be fine with USL doing it. I don't think anybody has a problem with leagues doing it. I think it's more how the nuts and bolts of the sanctioning process will work after that.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially in light of the legal environment we've had over the last, 7, 8 years with NASL and the lawsuit and all that. Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating to me to see how they're going to do it and how USL is going to organize their system to do it. I always think that these professional leagues and the standards are really in a closed system are really illusory, and it doesn't really matter if you're sanctioned at one level or not another by US Soccer, because it's more reflective of your level and not necessarily determinative of it. But we'll see what happens with how they handle it moving forward, and when it happens. I'm not sure.
This topic, the college topic, and then obviously we didn't even get to touch on the labor issues with Major League Soccer Players Association.
Oh,
Maybe
yeah.
that's another one to come.
Happy
But
to.
Andrew Viznovsky, the soccer lawyer, we know you through your Blue Sky account. How else might people find your work or what you do on a daily basis?
Well, I work at the law firm Vellawood. You can find me and the firm at vellawood.com. I have a blog there that is woefully updated. I think the last thing I wrote about that was the 2023 MLS Super Draft. And I'm on Twitter with my full name, and Instagram under Soccer Lawyer. So you can find me all over.
Andrew Viznovsky, thank you so much for shedding light on interesting times in the American soccer landscape.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate being on. Thanks for having me.